My wife cheated on me with my parents' golden child brother while I was working abroad. She got pregnant and organized a family dinner to announce it. But I found the emails where they planned scams together, and I sued everyone. Now my brother is in prison, and my parents lost their house. I'm 34 years old. I work in artificial intelligence for a tech company in Boston, and I need to get this story off my chest because basically everything I built in my life came crashing down a few months ago, in the most twisted way you can imagine. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was a kid, and my brother Tyler was born, because that's where all of this really started, though I didn't know it at the time. I grew up in a Boston suburb, nothing fancy but not bad either. You know, a middle-class house with a small yard and that sort of thing. When I was like 8 years old, Tyler came along, and I can pinpoint that exact moment as when my life completely changed. Not that my parents were particularly affectionate with me before that, honestly, but at least I existed to them. After Tyler was born, I literally became invisible. And I'm not exaggerating. Like when I say invisible, I mean I could be bleeding in the living room, and they'd ask if Tyler needed anything first. I remember once I fell off my bike and cut my knee pretty badly. I came home crying and my mom told me to shut up because Tyler was taking a nap. I put a Band-Aid on myself and they never mentioned it again. Things only got worse over the years. Tyler got everything. Absolutely everything. You wanted a new console? Tyler had it. You wanted piano lessons? Tyler got them, even though he never practiced. I'd ask for books for my birthday and they'd say they were too expensive, but Tyler got $200 sneakers every 2 months just because. By the time I got to high school, I'd already learned not to ask for anything. I basically lived like a ghost in that house. My parents went to all of Tyler's soccer games, all of them without exception, but when I had math or science competitions, which he won pretty often, by the way, there was always an excuse. They were tired, Tyler had something more important, whatever. So I focused on the only thing I could control, which was my education. I became obsessive about grades, about excelling academically, because in my head I thought that maybe if I was good enough, if I achieved something really impressive, they'd finally see me. I published papers when I was in college, participated in research projects, got an exchange program in Seoul, South Korea, that was super competitive and prestigious. You know what my parents said when I told them? My mom said, "Oh, that's nice, Marcus," and then immediately asked if we could lend Tyler money for a new business he wanted to start. They didn't even ask what the program was about or how long I'd be away. Tyler, of course, never paid that money back, but that was already normal at that point. The Seoul program was amazing, honestly. For the first time in my life, I felt like people valued me for my skills and my work, not for how I compared to my brother. They offered me to stay after the program to work at a tech startup that was doing really interesting things with machine learning, and I accepted without thinking twice. My parents didn't even come to my college graduation. They said the flight was too expensive, and besides, Tyler had an important event that weekend. I don't remember exactly what it was. I think a golf tournament or something, but clearly it was more important than seeing their son graduate with honors. I stayed in Seoul for like 5 years after graduation, working in tech, climbing positions, and honestly, those were the best years of my life up to that point. I met incredible people, traveled around Asia, and above all, I was thousands of miles away from all that family toxicity. That's where I met Amanda. She was an English teacher, American too, but had been living in Seoul for like 3 years when we met. She was sweet, understanding. She'd listen when I told her about my family and say all the right things about how they were the ones who were wrong, not me. We got married 2 years after we met in a small ceremony in Seoul. I invited my parents, obviously, and obviously they didn't come. They said they couldn't leave Tyler alone for that long because he was going through a difficult time, and besides, the flight was super expensive. Tyler had crashed his third car in 2 years and apparently needed emotional support or something. Amanda and I were happy in Seoul, or at least I thought we were. She had her job at an international school. I was advancing in my career. We'd bought a small but nice apartment in a nice area of the city. We talked about having kids eventually, about building a life there. Then my company offered me a promotion that required returning to Boston, to the main office. It was a senior position, a significant salary increase, basically everything I'd been working to get. Amanda wasn't very excited about the idea of returning to the United States, but we discussed it and eventually she agreed. I promised her it would be different, that we'd establish clear boundaries with my family, that our life together would be the priority. We moved back to Boston like 2 years ago. We got a house in Cambridge, nothing ostentatious, but a nice place in a good neighborhood. At first, I kept my parents at a distance. I'd see them maybe once every 2 months for a quick dinner, and Tyler didn't even enter the equation because honestly, I didn't want to see him. But then Tyler started calling me, saying he'd changed, that he was going to therapy, that he wanted to rebuild our brotherly relationship. I was skeptical, obviously, because Tyler had been a mess his whole life, scamming people with various schemes, living off my parents' money, not keeping a job for more than 3 months straight. But Amanda, being the sweet and optimistic person I thought she was, convinced me to give him a chance. She'd say things like, "He's your brother, Marcus. Family is important, people can change," all that stuff. So I agreed to see him. The first time was just coffee. Tyler showed up with this whole humble and remorseful attitude, apologizing for everything, saying he'd finally realized how badly they'd treated me. He sounded genuine, I have to admit, and a stupid part of me wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could have a normal relationship with my brother. Amanda was super happy to see me reconnecting with my family, and she started inviting him to dinner at our house. At first, I made excuses, but she insisted, and eventually, Tyler was coming over like once a week. This is where things get really fucked up. My company sent me back to Seoul for a week to work on a project with the team there. It was perfect timing professionally, but it meant leaving Amanda alone. She told me it was no problem, that actually Tyler had mentioned he could help her with some house repairs we needed to do. I wasn't very comfortable with the idea, but she insisted. And honestly, at that point, I completely trusted Amanda. So I said, okay. What I didn't know is that she'd also invited my parents to stay that week, supposedly to keep her company while I wasn't there. I was in Seoul all week, working like 12 hours a day on this intense project. Amanda and I would video call every night. She'd tell me everything was fine, that Tyler had fixed the garage door, that my parents were being helpful cooking and stuff. Everything seemed normal, or at least that's what I thought. I returned to Boston on a Friday night, exhausted from the flight and jet lag, and Amanda had organized a family dinner for that night. My parents were there, Tyler was there, and Amanda announced she had important news. She was pregnant. She said she was like 6 weeks along, and everyone started celebrating and congratulating us. I was in shock, like good shock, because we'd been talking about having kids but not actively trying, so it was a surprise but a happy surprise. I hugged Amanda. My parents said a couple of generic congratulations things, but what really caught my attention was Tyler's reaction. He had this weird expression on his face, like between proud and possessive, and when Amanda mentioned 6 weeks, he looked at her in a way that made me uncomfortable, but I couldn't explain exactly why. That night, after everyone left, something wouldn't let me sleep. I couldn't get Tyler's expression out of my head, and I started doing the math. 6 weeks ago was exactly when I was in Seoul. Technically, it was possible that it had happened just before I left, but something didn't add up. I got up at like 3 in the morning and went to check the security cameras we had in the house. We had a basic system with cameras at the front entrance, the garage, and the backyard. The recordings had been deleted. The entire week, I was away, completely deleted. I felt like someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on me. Why would Amanda or anyone delete the recordings? My brain started going to dark places, but I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe it was a technical error or something. But then I remembered the system had automatic cloud backup, a feature I'd activated months ago and probably no one else knew existed. It took me like an hour to figure out how to access the backup, but I finally did it, and what I saw in those videos basically destroyed my life. The first night I left, Tyler arrived at the house at like 8 at night. Up to there, everything normal. I thought maybe he was coming for dinner or something. But he didn't leave. He stayed all night. And the next night, and the next. My parents arrived the second day and seemed perfectly comfortable with the whole situation. I saw Tyler and Amanda kissing in the kitchen. I saw them holding hands. I saw them going together into my bedroom, into the bed I shared with my wife. I sat there in my office, watching these videos at 4 in the morning, and I literally couldn't process what I was seeing. It was like my brain refused to accept reality. I kept watching. I don't know why, maybe hoping to find some explanation that made sense, but it only got worse. There were clips of my parents cooking for Tyler and Amanda, laughing with them in the living room like they were the happy couple. In one video, my mom was showing Amanda baby pictures of Tyler, talking about what he was like as a child, like they were sharing those typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law moments. The part that destroyed me most was a video from the night before I returned. They were all in the living room, Tyler had his arm around Amanda, and my dad said something like, "Well, Marcus comes back tomorrow, so enjoy this last night." And everyone laughed. They laughed. Like the whole situation was an inside joke, and I was the idiot who wasn't in on it. I don't know how long I sat there, watching and re-watching the videos. Eventually, I heard Amanda getting up. It was like 6 in the morning already. I went downstairs with my laptop. She was in the kitchen making coffee. She saw me and smiled. That sweet smile I had loved, and asked me how I'd slept. I put the laptop in front of her with one of the videos playing. Her face changed completely, like from sweet pregnant wife to total panic in a matter of seconds. What followed was a whole blur of screaming and excuses. She tried to say she was confused, that Tyler had taken advantage of her, that she was vulnerable because I worked so much. Then she changed to saying, I had pushed her to this by being so cold with my family. I called Tyler, told him to come to the house immediately, and when he arrived with that cynical smile he always had, something in me broke. I showed him the videos and he didn't even try to deny it. He said, and I swear this is exactly what he said. At least now, she's with someone who can be present in her life. I called my parents, told them to come immediately. When they arrived and I showed them the videos, I thought that at least, after a lifetime of favoring Tyler, this would be too much even for them. I was wrong. My mom told me I had been a bad husband, that I was always working, that Amanda needed attention. My dad said Tyler really loved Amanda, and that it was selfish of me to ruin their happiness. Selfish. That was the word he used. I'd just shown them videos of my wife cheating on me with my brother in my own house, and I was the selfish one. I told them to leave my house. All of them. Amanda tried to say we needed to talk, that we could fix this. Tyler told me he wasn't surprised my wife looked for someone else, that I'd always been an emotionless robot. My parents didn't say anything else. They just left with Tyler and Amanda. I thought that was rock bottom, that things couldn't get worse. 2 weeks later, I received legal documents from my parents. They were suing me. Yes, you read that right. My parents were suing me. The lawsuit asked that I pay $5,000 monthly to Tyler because supposedly he had left job opportunities to help at my house, $3,000 monthly to Amanda because she was pregnant and needed support, and $50,000 immediately as startup money for a new business Tyler wanted to begin. The legal argument was basically that I had emotionally damaged Tyler by cutting him out of my life after he had shown me so much love and support, and that I had a financial responsibility toward the baby regardless of who the father was, because we were married when it was conceived. That's where Rebecca came in, my lawyer. A friend from work recommended her firm when I told her what was happening, and she was the first person in this whole nightmare who told me I wasn't crazy, that what they were doing to me was absolutely insane. We sat down and put together a plan. First, obviously, we started divorce proceedings. Second, we were going to countersue. Rebecca investigated Tyler's history a bit and basically found legal gold. Tyler had been scamming people for years, literal years. Fake investment schemes, drop-shipping businesses where he never sent the products, loans he'd ask for, and never return. Rebecca contacted like 20 of Tyler's victims she could find through public records and previous small claims. We put together a class action lawsuit against Tyler, and here comes the interesting part. Amanda was involved. Turns out Amanda had used her position as a teacher to obtain information from parents, addresses, phone numbers, financial information, which she then passed to Tyler for his scams. We had emails between them coordinating all this, money transfers, everything. It wasn't just that she'd cheated on me, she'd been actively helping my brother scam families with kids at her school. The Department of Education opened their own investigation when Rebecca presented them with the evidence. The case went to court, and it was an absolute disaster for them. The judge was an older woman, like 60 years old, who clearly had no patience for this nonsense. When my parents' lawyers presented their case that I owed money, Rebecca presented all the evidence of Tyler's scams. My parents' lawyers had no idea about any of this. Like Tyler clearly hadn't told them he had a criminal history waiting to explode. But the best part was when it came to light that my parents had been helping Tyler hide money he'd scammed. They had bank accounts in their name with deposits from Tyler's victims. The judge ordered a full criminal investigation, not just against Tyler but also against my parents for money laundering and conspiracy. Amanda tried to play the innocent victim card, but the emails Rebecca presented were too clear. There was one where she literally told Tyler, "I got Jesse's parents' information. His dad is an executive at a pharma company. He probably has good credit." Tyler tried to run. I'm not kidding. He went to Florida like 2 weeks after all this evidence came out, supposedly to visit a friend, but clearly to hide. He got caught trying to pull another scam, this time trying to sell a car that wasn't his to an undercover FBI agent. The FBI was already investigating him for mail fraud related to one of his previous schemes. Everything came together at the worst possible moment for him, or the best possible moment for me, depending on how you look at it. Amanda lost her job, obviously. The school district can't have teachers who use student information for scams. She tried to sue them for wrongful termination, but that lawsuit was dismissed in like 2 seconds. My parents had to sell their house to pay Tyler's victims as part of a deal. Their lawyer managed to avoid more serious criminal charges. Tyler ended up with 3 years in federal prison. The baby part was complicated. I insisted on a paternity test immediately after birth because I needed to know. It turned out the baby is mine. The dates lined up right at the edge of the last time. Amanda and I had been together before I traveled to Seoul. I don't know how to feel about it to this day, honestly. I have a son, the boy who's not to blame for any of this shit. But every time I see him, I also remember all the betrayal. Amanda tried to use the baby as leverage for reconciliation, or at least to get more money in the divorce, but Rebecca was brutal in negotiations. With all the fraud evidence and Amanda's participation in the scams, she didn't have much position to negotiate. She ended up with basic shared custody. I have the kid most of the time, and a minimal financial agreement because technically she has income potential similar to mine, though now she's working in retail because no school is going to hire her with her record. The cherry on top was like 3 months after the trial. Amanda and Tyler showed up at my door, with Tyler already out on bail before his prison time started, trying to convince me to drop the charges. Amanda was crying, saying Tyler was the love of her life, that the baby needed a present father, all this drama. Tyler threatened me, said he knew people who could hurt me if I didn't let all this go. I had it all recorded on my security system, because obviously after everything that happened, I upgraded the whole camera system. That recording went straight to the prosecutor's office and added extortion and threat attempts to Tyler's charges. My parents tried one last move. They organized an intervention at their church with the pastor and other members trying to convince me to forgive and support my family. They brought this pastor, who didn't know me at all, telling me about honoring your parents and Christian forgiveness. I brought documents. All the documents of the scams, the victims, including 3 elderly people from that same church that Tyler had scammed with a fake investment scheme, promising them secure returns for their retirement. The pastor went pale when he saw that. Like suddenly all his preaching about forgiveness evaporated when he realized Tyler had scammed members of his own congregation. Today, almost 2 years after all this, I'm in a weird place. Professionally, I'm better than ever. My work is solid and keeps me busy. Financially, I'm fine. I never had to pay a cent of what my parents asked for and actually received some restitution for legal expenses. My son is now 1.5 years old, and honestly, he's the only good thing that came out of this whole situation. He's an incredible kid. Happy, curious, and I try to make sure he never, ever feels the lack of love or attention I felt growing up. Amanda has supervised visits every 2 weeks. She keeps trying to convince me she made a mistake, that Tyler manipulated her, changing her story depending on what she thinks I want to hear. I don't believe anything she says, and honestly, I don't care anymore. Tyler gets out of prison in like 8 months, with sentence reduction for good behavior or whatever. My parents tried to contact me a few months ago saying they were going to therapy and wanted to rebuild the relationship, but I told them I wasn't interested. Maybe it's cruel. I don't know. But I spent 34 years being invisible to them except when they needed something or someone to blame, and I no longer have room for that toxicity in my life. The weird thing is that sometimes I still catch myself hoping someone from my biological family will act like a normal person, like hoping my mom will call to ask about her grandson without ulterior motives, or that my dad will admit they fucked up with me my whole life. But that's never going to happen, and I'm finally accepting that. The people who've supported me through all this, friends from work, Rebecca, my lawyer, who became a real friend, they're my family now. My son asked me last week why he doesn't see Grandma and Grandpa like other kids at his daycare. He's still too young to understand the whole story, so I just told him that sometimes families are complicated, but that he has a lot of people who love him. He seemed satisfied with that answer for now, but I know eventually he's going to ask harder questions. I don't know exactly what I'm going to tell him when he's old enough to understand, but I do know I'm going to be honest with him. And I'm going to make sure he never doubts that he's loved and valued, no matter what. I guess that's the only thing I can control in the end. Being the father I never had.